What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. I am your wonderful host, Redbeard, and I am so happy to have you guys here tonight with me. Shortly, Tom will be joining me. We're going to be talking about some economic stuff, and hopefully it's going to be a good conversation for you guys. We're going to try and cover the Fed, some tariffs, and a couple different items. Just waiting for him to pop in here. It shouldn't be too long. A little bit of housekeeping. As you guys have started to notice a little bit here and there, I am slowly getting my format and some things ironed out that are hopefully going to increase the quality of the podcast, add a little bit of quality of life and something a little bit more appealing. So just stay tuned. I'm working on a few things production-wise, and hopefully it's something that you guys and gals enjoy. Aside from that, I have been able to reschedule Scott Horton. And so as a result, I'm going to hopefully be having him back, having him on Saturday, July 26th at 5 p.m. or 1700 Central Time. So that's just something I wanted to put out there. I do have it rescheduled. So hopefully everything works out the way that we need to this time. As we all know, life kind of gets in the way. But in the end of the day, hopefully we can make this happen. And we will do the very best that we possibly can to make all of this work and kind of fall into place. So yeah, we got a couple things going on. Nothing too crazy. While we're waiting here, let's kind of see where everybody's from. Where's everybody tuning in from? Looks like we got a couple people dropping in here, and I suspect that we'll have a few people chiming in as time goes on. I see Learn Me Something in the comments. Great to have you, brother. Really appreciate you. Centerline Systems, Mark, good to see you, man. It's always good to have some of the guys that have been there from the very beginning coming back to continuously support. It's always appreciated, and really happy to see new people too. It's always good to get some new faces, some new comments and stuff like that. So it's always a pleasure. Yeah, so there's the reason I kind of wanted to go over the economic situation is because there's a couple things that have somewhat developed over the last few weeks, last few months, if you will, notwithstanding the big beautiful bill, or as some kind of as some people like to call it, the big beautiful BS. I'm trying to curb my language, so just bear with me. I've been pretty good about it, but you know how it is. Sometimes we get into the heat of the moment, and that heat just kind of overtakes us. So the big beautiful bill. We're also looking. One of the conversations I'm planning to have this evening with Tom is surrounding Jerome Powell, the Fed, and things that are going on with the Fed, and hopefully we can kind of get a picture of where things are going to end up going. It's one of those things that, like, I think most people, much like myself, would much rather not have the Fed in existence because the Fed, unfortunately, the Fed really does is one of the biggest contributors, if not the biggest contributor, to many, if not most, of all the problems that we do face. Because from the Fed, you get all the funding that, unfortunately, fuels the behemoth that is the empire that we live in, the world's largest government. And so, yeah. And it looks like Tom just popped in here. So I will bring him on here if Tom is ready. How's it going, man? It's great to see you. He's getting set up here. So, but yeah, we're going to cover the Fed, and I want to go over some tariff stuff too, because unfortunately, we're starting to see some tariff stuff pop up also. So there's a couple things to talk about, but we'll take it step by step. But before we get too far afield, Tom, welcome back. It's great to have you, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Sorry I'm a little bit late, coming back from a family party, and I just got carried away there, and
fashionably late.
Yeah,
fashionably late.
That's what I am. Fashionably late. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. I'm excited to have this conversation about the Fed, tariffs, and you know, kind of the things that are surrounding it. And I'm sure as we go along, as we do, there's always going to be one or two side tangents that I'm sure will stem from our conversations. Before we get too far into that, though, for those of whom aren't aware of who you are, you want to give just a quick introduction about who you are, what you're doing, and what people can expect from you.
Sure. I'm Tom Eddlem. I'm the blue collar economist. I write for the Libertarian Institute. I have my own podcast called Blue Collar Breakdown. I wanted to do the Blue Collar Economist podcast, but someone else who's pretty good already had it, so I didn't steal it. But I just started my own about less than a month ago. Well, maybe it's a month ago. I've done 4 episodes. So yeah, I do it live every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. What is that? That's I don't know what time what that is. Yeah. What? No, but I mean, I was trying to do it in military, and I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I do that live Wednesdays on YouTube, X, and Facebook, and I'm going to soon. I'll be posting it on all the other venues like Spotify and Apple and the rest of it. Yeah. So that's where I'm at.
I've had the opportunity. I'm pretty sure. I think I've seen every one that you've done, and I think I mentioned to you via text message the other day. I'm like, man, I'm so happy you put graphs up there because sometimes it's like it's beyond kind of my comprehension just hearing it. So it's like, oh, okay, like yeah, arrow goes up or arrow goes down. So it helps.
And graphs, and graphs sometimes need interpretation too. So I have to work on it myself because I know not everybody watches the podcast. Sometimes they just listen, and I describe this and you have to figure out a way to tell the viewer. Or I should say the listener, how the viewer sees it and what the viewer is seeing. So, but I'm playing around with it. I'm just starting with my podcast. I'm just going to have fun with it. And then I'll have guests on like you do eventually, but I want to get, 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever under my belt before I start adding in guests.
Absolutely.
And we'll have some mutual friends on there. Like I hope Sean Kennedy and maybe some other people from the Libertarian Institute and the rest.
Yeah. No, it's great. And I would highly recommend anybody go check out what you're doing over there. Because it's, especially if people aren't really super aware or have like a really good grasp on economics. I think the way that you at least present a lot of the information, in my opinion, is really good. And it helps me get somewhat of a better understanding of kind of like why things are breaking or why things could get better, so.
Yeah, I try to put it in terms that the average person can kind of understand.
Sure.
I'm not entirely convinced that I succeed in that because we have our local libertarian meetup here called the South Shore Libertarian Party in southeastern Massachusetts, and Sean Kennedy, a frequent guest on the show, and my brother-in-law were there, and they said, well, you understand economics and you try to bring it down to the basic level, but it's got to get more basic than that. And I'm like, okay. So I have to work on it. But in my defense, I think I do a pretty good job because I'm used to presenting to teenagers. I mean, I did 11 years as a high school classroom teacher for history and economics. So I have a little experience with that. I know what the average, at least high school kid can understand.
No, I think like I said, I think you do a good job. And, what I've found too is like anytime that you're trying to present an argument or explain something, even for me, like, and I've done a fair bit of this in different ways. And I do feel like you always feel like after you finish that there's something you could have done better in hindsight, or I could have, added some nuance to this, or I could have adjusted how I did this. So I definitely get it, at least from that point of view. And I think it's always like a forever quest of like improving how you produce something and show different material and explain ideas really. So, Yeah,
Sure.
I for one, I'm super happy you're doing it, and I think it's going to be a good resource for people down the road. So, um, with that being said, I'm hoping I can make the screen sharing work, but I don't
You
know.
have graphs?
Yeah, I not quite graphs. I'm not quite that sophisticated, but I do have a news article, and
Okay, well, that's something. Yeah.
we're getting there, but I don't so to kind of start off the conversation about the Fed, I'm sure like so many people have seen the friction between Powell and Trump has started to escalate a fair bit over their disagreements of adjusting the rates. And I thought it was
Right.
kind of interesting. I have a quick news article here, and I'm going to have to hop over here quick, but we can kind of I'll scroll down and we can kind of see some of the points in here, a little bit kind of explaining some of the whys and the hows. But yeah, apparently there's been a pretty strong disagreement between these two. Trump wants him to adjust I think Trump wants him to lower the rates, if I remember correctly, and Powell doesn't really want to do anything right now. And I'm not the foremost advocate of the Federal Reserve, as I'm sure you're not, as well as many others. But
And
I
no, I'm not.
yeah, and it's like, but it's one of those things that I think is really interesting to me because I don't really, and I could be totally wrong or just misremembering, but I don't remember a time to where there's been this much of a conflict where the person in the Federal Reserve was like really just stuck in like, I'm not doing this, and then you have Trump over here that's just like, well, if you don't do this, then like X, Y, or Z, or you have people, he wants to fire somebody, and then you have Republicans that are, it's just a mess. And I was curious kind of to get your take on this, and just to see what you had in the thought process there, because I think it's kind of an interesting situation personally.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Trump has the constitutional power to fire Powell. The Federal
Sure.
Reserve was set up to be independent, and the president does appoint the Federal Reserve chair to a term.
Yep.
But I don't believe he sits in his chair as at the pleasure of the president. So now Trump may try to fire him anyway because, well, he does a lot of things that he can't do. I mean, the raising of the tariffs,
Yep.
that's blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, only
Sure.
Congress can raise taxes, and yet he's done it across the board. So, and those will be struck down by the courts eventually. But he may try to fire Powell. I don't know.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is the whole controversy over interest rates, and I'm probably the most heterodox person over this, because if you ask people of any school, including the Austrian school, to which I subscribe,
Sure. Yep.
but any school of economics, they will tell you, well, if you want to fight inflation, you've got to lower interest rates, and if you want to stimulate the economy and economic growth and create jobs, wait a minute, no. If you want to fight inflation, you raise interest rates. If you want to stimulate the economy and promote growth and promote jobs, you lower interest rates. That's the official narrative. And I hold that neither one does the other. In fact, I think it's more stimulative of economic growth to raise interest rates, not to lower them. And as far as fighting inflation, yes, raising interest rates has a small impact on what we would call price inflation, but it's a very small impact. It's almost like there are two kinds of inflation. There's the inflation that we all talk about, the price inflation of consumer goods as measured in the consumer price index. And there was a big news story this week how it was higher than expected. It was 0.3% for the month of June. And the news came out this month. And that was more than they expected. And it increased the annual CPI to 2.7%, and all the rest of it. And but there's another kind of inflation that's called that I would call credit inflation. And
Sure.
this is what the interest rate really impacts. It impacts, and it's almost like probably the best way to think of it is the best way to raise price inflation is to simply print more currency or create more currency in circulation, whether it's the physical dollars you have in your wallet or the dollars, the digital dollars you have in your checking account, in your savings account. But there's another way where you can increase credit, and that doesn't really create dollars unless it's monetized in a certain way. And that impacts some goods that are mostly purchased on credit. Now, the biggest one, of course, is housing. So when they lowered interest rates, yeah, it stimulated the creation of debt. And that was great for billionaires because they could, the asset prices for anything purchased with debt, like real estate, and to a certain extent, cars have gone up. Whereas cars had been getting cheaper over the years. If you index it for inflation, recently they've gotten more expensive because they're primarily purchased on credit, and cars are a little bit different. There's a little bit more competition. There's fewer subsidies, but certainly with real estate, but also with other assets like stocks, it tends to send them upward as well. So right. you almost have two different kind of things. There's the regular consumer goods, and then there's the credit purchased goods. And when the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, that sends the sticker price for those credit goods upward, whereas it doesn't have as much of an impact on coffee or or milk or donuts, or I'm trying to get out of Dunkin' Donuts here, but a shirt that you buy at the Gap, it doesn't have that much of an impact on that when the Fed lowers interest rates or raises interest rates. But when more money gets printed, whether it's done physically by the U.S. Mint in the form of more dollar bills or more coins, or digitally by the Federal Reserve Bank, which they do, then that tends to raise the price of coffee and milk and shirts and all the rest of it.
Sure.
So it's almost like there's two levers, and people think of it as one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's a really good point. And that's something, especially when you talk about the Fed and how, it's a realm of digital, and it's not always the physical, right? Because I think when a lot of people think of money creation, and to be fair, I did for a long time. I'm like, dude, they're just like hammering out dollar bills, or whatever the case is. And all I see in my head is just like this massive printing press. And it's like, no, like that's not the case. Like there is literally just, the Fed is digitizing all of this money. And it's really, it's, for me, when I first heard about it, I'm just like, well, how the heck does that even work? Like, how is there actually any tangible value to it? And it threw me off for a long time. And then it's just, when you kind of hear about, the way that they use it or how they leverage it or whatever, it's like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I kind of get like what their game is here. And so, but it's interesting. I'm happy you say that, because there really is the two levers versus the one, like you were saying. And I think that's an important thing to remember. So right. It's especially when you look at, when there's an increase, say in like the budget or whatever, and they have to, they set a certain level of spending. It's like, okay, well, yeah, like there's a good portion of this money that just doesn't physically exist, but it does exist technically in the digital realm. So love when you said that. So,
okay. Now I'm going to pull back a little bit on it, because I think every economist listening to this is saying, oh, you're way oversimplifying. And I am. Yeah. Because there's a fungibility both ways between credit inflation and actual cash inflation, in the sense that, first of all, the CPI, 1/3 of the CPI is housing, and that's measuring the credit inflation to a certain extent. I mean, the effect of it anyway.
Right.
And there are a lot of other commodities that are kind of in between that, oh, you want to buy a diamond ring for your fiance? Well, you can put it on layaway and it's purchased with credit, or I gave the example of cars. A lot of people buy their cars with cash, not the majority, but some of them do, or it's a very short-term cash thing. So a very short-term loan thing. It's I mean, they do go out 7-8 years now, a lot of them, but the majority don't. And the majority of cars are purchased on lease, which is not really a credit thing. It's just, so there's two levers, but there's interplay between them. So just for all the actual economists out there listening saying, oh, you're just making this sound too simple. Yeah. Yes, I am. I'm trying to make it understandable. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm, you know what, you're at this juncture, you're my preferred economist because you're here with me. So it's just like, all right, well, I'm okay with the way you're explaining it, but there's always going to be, I feel like there's always going to be some people screeching in the background, regardless of what the topic is. But I think the way that you break it down makes a lot of sense.
I'm saying that the people complaining would have a legitimate argument. I mean, they would, because there is interplay between them and there are grades, but as a general rule, all rules being meant to be broken.
Sure.
The credit inflation by lowering the interest rates, and they do it indirectly. There's a method there. They don't just say everybody charges this rate,
right?
But there's and we can get into that if you want. But the manipulation of interest rates impacts credit inflation, whereas the printing of more dollars, whether they be minted in coin or printed digitally with keystrokes, they are pretty different things, and they are pretty measurable. They have pretty measurable effects on different prices based on the good.
Sure,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense, and I, I do think it definitely bears explaining that too. So yeah, I follow along with you. Before we get farther into the Fed here real quick, Centerline Systems has a question, I think more for you. If Tom is willing to play devil's advocate, could you try to explain their logic for why the Fed exists or continues?
Oh, I can give you their exact words. I mean, they would argue this. Look, we had all these issues back in the 1800s where we had all kinds of over exuberance and then crashes, over exuberance and crashes. And in the 1800s, there were quite a few, really up until 1906, there was a crash. And what we needed the Federal Reserve for is to kind of level the playing field. Don't let people, what we need the Federal Reserve for is when people get too exuberant, the Federal Reserve can raise interest rates and kind of tamp down on the credit. And when the people get too pessimistic, because one of the key Keynesian views. Now, this was 25 years after the Federal Reserve was created, but the argument was kind of around even in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was created, was that, a lot of times what happens is people get pessimistic and they just hold on to their cash because they're afraid of losing it or whatever. And that crashes the economy because the economy is based on consumer spending. And if consumers are afraid to spend, then businesses are going to go out of business. And then there's going to be even more fear, and it's just going to roll and roll and roll. That's never happened in history, but people believe it. And people think it happened during the Great Depression, which, by the way, the Federal Reserve Bank was at the helm. Doing it, So, I mean, the argument that, we need the Federal Reserve to prevent the Great Depression
Right.
is kind of a moot point because they created the Great Depression. But that's the argument, that we need them to sort of, and a lot of people actually believe that what we need is that the official billionaire propaganda is we need low levels of inflation. We need 2%, maybe 3% inflation. The worst thing for the economy is deflation, because look at the Great Depression. There was deflation during the Great Depression, and there was. But it's not the deflation that causes the problem. It's not that a country gets deflation and then they go into recession. They go into recession and prices come down. And I would argue that's a good thing. If because people, it's almost like I go back to Catholic social teaching every once in a while, and they talk about this preferential option for the poor. And a lot of Catholics think that means, oh, well, the Catholic Church is socialist, we should have social programs. No, but the markets almost have that when you think about it, because if you get laid off from your job and you're looking for work, you're not going to find it for some period of time, and you've been semi-frugal and you've saved up a little bit of a nest egg, it's going to last longer. If prices fall, right? I mean, you're going to, if prices are going up, you're going to be out of luck a lot faster.
Sure.
So the market actually kind of helps people down and out during the downturn, just the natural market forces. And people don't really understand that, and there's going to be people out there, socialists, who say, well, yeah, but what if they didn't have anything? What if they had no savings? Well, whether prices go up or prices go down, it's not going to matter, right? Because if they don't have anything, they don't have anything. But the point is, for the people who are let go and are looking for work and maybe they have 6 weeks of a lifeline, or maybe they have 6 months, or whatever it is, whatever they've saved up, it's going to go further if prices fall than if prices go up. So that's a good thing. And people still need to buy stuff in a recession. I mean, that's one of the things, one of the reasons why the prices go down is because sellers want to sell their wares. And if they can't sell them at a higher price, they're going to move the prices lower so that they start selling. And what happens is, every single time the bargain hunters come out of the basement and start buying and restore the economy. The only time it doesn't is when the Federal Reserve comes in. The only time we've ever had a recession that lasted longer than a couple of years was the 1930s under the Federal Reserve.
Sure. Yeah.
That was the only time, because the Federal Reserve kept trying to come in, and the federal government as well, with what they call fiscal stimulus, government money spending, and it kept gumming up the works. It kept preventing the economy from naturally healing in a way that it did really in 1920 and 1906, and you can go back, back all the way back to the very terrible panic of 1819.
Sure.
So the market always heals itself. It's not, people who think, oh, well, what happens is there's this paradox of thrift that, oh, well, if people start pulling back, they're never going to come back out. Well, no, they have to eat. They have to buy certain things. The rich people are always going to want certain things. They're not going to keep pulling back forever. They will wait. And then when there's a bargain, they'll say, you know what, I'll buy it. And that always happens. I mean, that lack of faith in the market is why we have socialism and why we have heavy regulations that could be called today fascism. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And, and I think that when you do look at that, and you see so many of the ups and downs, and there's actually going back to the 1930s here in a minute, up to today, I have something that I think is going to be kind of an interesting talking point. I'm really curious to get your opinion on this. But first, Centerline Systems also so you got you right before I even got to it. Yeah, he was wondering. So
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. This coffee and my run. All right. My son-in-law bought me this mug. It's got my 3 daughters back from many years ago.
Oh, that's cool.
And Ron Paul on Rushmore, Mount Rushmore. Yes. Okay, there you go.
That's awesome.
And it's just black coffee, but I do have, when I'm done with the coffee, I do have some whiskey, and it's Knob Creek, so it's nothing expensive. I mean, I learned long ago that I don't have a sophisticated palate. I don't. I mean,
look, I mean, people like what they like, and I'm not gonna,
that's it.
Yeah. I don't drink, so I don't really have an opinion beyond like people like what they like. So you know what? If that's what gets you going, Tom, more power to you, my friend. So
yeah, no, I mean, actually, a teacher, a friend of mine from Florida, recommended it, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was the first whiskey that people always, I started on whiskeys. Like I have 1 or 2 drinks per night, most nights, not every night. I don't drink every night, but 1 or 2 before I go to bed. And, I got into whiskeys about, I don't know, 10 years ago. Okay. And everyone always used to say to me, oh, I love the burn. I love the burn at the end. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know any burn. What's what burn? And I'm a sipper. I'm not like a whoosh, but I tried shooting it too. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Knob Creek was the first one. And I said, oh, that's what it's about. Okay. So I mean, but I mean, my favorites are, I got a couple of scotches that are favorites, Macallan 12 and Glenlivet 12. Those are really my favorites. But anyway, you didn't ask my whiskey recommendations, especially since I already said I don't have a sophisticated palate, so.
Yeah. Well, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, you're a man of variety. Again, I don't drink, so it sounds like a good variety to me. So, my downfall is Ghost. I like energy drinks, coffee, anything that's gonna like push me over the edge for caffeine is probably, to be honest, if it doesn't kill me, I'll be very shocked at some point. But it is my crutch. So we all have kind of our vices when it comes to drinks, I guess. And my downfall is energy drinks. So
yeah, my preferred drug of choice is caffeine too. I had a boss in the 90s who said, does that coffee cup come surgically attached to your hand? Because I was always drinking coffee, and I love it. Yeah.
No, if it's not an energy drink, it is 100% going to be coffee. I can drink coffee pretty much 24/7, hot, cold, doesn't really matter. It's pretty much become just a focal point of my life. And I mean, I know this is a little far afield, but it happens, and kind of keeps the conversation in a light way. But
sure.
Speaking of, the Fed and economics, I don't know if you saw recently, and the reason I brought up the 1930s, because I think, what was it, 33, that the government, they banned gold, or they made it illegal to have gold.
There were a few exceptions, but they didn't go around collecting it. They basically said you have to turn it in, and if you didn't turn it in, oh well. But because they devalued the gold, they devalued the dollar 40%. It used to be before 1930, I think it's 35. Before 1935, the dollar was pegged to $20.67 per ounce.
Yep.
After that, it was $35 an ounce. That's a downgrade of roughly 40%.
Yeah.
Now, of course, now it's 3,500 an ounce, but whatever.
And it's, I have to say, like, I'm like slowly trying to like, chip away and like get enough set aside to where I can make a logical purchase on silver or gold. And I'm just like, dude, like, I can't catch up at this point. I'm just a guy that's just trying to make it. And, but one of these days I am going to have my investment that I will feel a little bit better about the fact that I get it, but it's a struggle bus right now. But hey, for all of those who have it, like, good on you. Like, seriously, it's one of those things to where I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, I guess. And and speaking on that, and the reason I brought up the 1930s and the issue surrounding gold then is, even though that we've moved past that, and we've gotten beyond that, I think it's interesting seeing the slew of states now that are in Missouri just recently did this, to where they've moved to having what is it, like gold backs, I think is what it is, or their form of like a gold certificate to utilize in commerce and buying and selling things. And I don't know. I wish I could remember the number, but there's several states that have done this, to where they now will allow the use of silver and gold certificates. And I wonder if the people in those states that have approved it and that have made it, legal tender, at least for use inside their states, if that is kind of the beginning of their way of kind of divesting from an economy that's just really kind of, in a bad spot, especially as it pertains to the Fed, because I think that it's a conversation that's been had for a long time about, like, we got to move to something better. And, if we don't do it sooner than later, then we're going to really be in the hurt locker. And I think that there are people in these states that have put forth these things through and made it law in their states. I think they're kind of ahead of the game. And I don't know if I'm wrong on that, but I feel like they're kind of divesting from a situation that's really not getting better. And I was curious to what your take was on that, Tom.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if states started coining gold and silver coins.
Sure. Yeah.
But the certificate thing is just not going to work. It's unconstitutional. The federal government will come in and put a stop to it immediately. I believe it's Article 1, Section 10. I have to check my memory of the Constitution said no, but one part of the Constitution says no state shall make their own currency other than silver and gold coin. It's something to that effect. So they actually have to do the coining. They don't have to, they can't just print certificates, because at that time, the founding fathers were very much against paper currency at all.
Yes.
Even the redeemable, what we'd call representative currency today, where you could take your piece of paper and go and get exchange it for gold or silver.
Right.
So I think if they're trying to do certificates, it's not going to work. If they do coining, then that's going to create a big problem for the federal government that they cannot fix.
And and to be fair, that's, I've tried to follow it the best that I can, and I don't know to what extent, if some of these states only did the certificates, or if they had moved into the coinage. That much I don't know, but I know that some of the states, Missouri being the recent one, have recognized gold and silver as being legal tender that can be used, and so I've seen iterations of it throughout the different states that have done this. So, I mean, maybe some states have figured that out. They're like, oh, well, we got to do this different. And they changed the way that they did it. Or some of them just by default did strictly like the gold and silver trading use, if that makes any sense, like where people can just utilize that as legal tender. So it's been hard to follow it, because I feel like each state has kind of gone at it slightly different, and I don't really see that each one has like done it exactly as the next one, and I'm sure there's reasons for that, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. And look, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, any state that's willing to give the federal government to run for its money at this point, I mean, isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I'm interested to see where it's going to go. So
yeah, adopting the resolutions is one thing. Getting widespread application of it or use of it is another thing, and it's going to be a little more problematic than it would have been, say, 40 years ago, because so much of the commerce is online.
Sure.
So how do you do that? I mean, I guess you could do, a dual gold, silver / Bitcoin or whatever currency. But right now, Bitcoin, I still see as it's, I know there are a lot of Bitcoin fanatics out there, but it's still too wide. The swings are too wide in value. It's swinging wider than the dollar, and until it actually starts getting used as an actual currency. I mean, people talk about it as a cryptocurrency, but it's really being used as a speculative investment mechanism right now, primarily. So when it ends being a speculative investment thing, maybe it becomes an actual currency. Maybe people start using Bitcoin. I don't know. And that might solve the problem that gold and silver currently face when we're talking about state resolutions saying gold and silver are legal tender. Because in your in-person purchases, you walk into maybe not a national chain like Target, but your local supermarket or whatever, and they start saying, we accept gold and silver. That might work. And then you want to buy something from Amazon or eBay or whatever, then you can use Bitcoin. So that may work. But right now, Bitcoin is just too, I know it's what is it, 15 years old now, but it's still too new in the sense that people are not using it for what it was designed to be used for. They're using it to hoard, and that's not the original purpose of it, as I understand it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, and I agree with that. I think it was, I definitely think it was meant to be used in a more like common exchange versus what it's being used for now. And, and Centerline actually just brought up about the gold. It was, the last time I checked, it was like only like 7 states. So he's saying per Google, which I mean, take that for what you will, it's up to 12 states, which is even more than I had thought initially. So, which is great, because I hope that momentum continues to, I really hope it continues to keep going, because I mean, if once you start getting close to like that, third to like half, I think that has the potential to really kind of persuade the momentum to go in one way or another, to where I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, all right, well, maybe there's something to this. And maybe we might be able to have an exchange of actual value versus what we have today with a dollar that's, I mean, in my opinion, is better used almost as toilet paper than it is for actual transactional purposes. But when you look at the dollar, because it's so common, I guess that's kind of what we're left with at this moment. So I just think it's an interesting conversation personally, and I'm interested, and I know I said this before, but I'm interested to see how that's going to kind of put the challenge towards the structures that we have right now, being the Fed, and how the federal government's going to kind of take this on if you start to see more and more states at this juncture adopt some type of resolution or legalization process to just use the general or in general to use gold and silver for transactions. So, but you made a lot of valid points too. And I do think there are hurdles to that, where we definitely have more of an online type of marketplace. So it's like, how are we going to even be able to take that and transition that reasonably into an online space? So those are great.
There's the other thing too. There's this an economic concept called Gresham's law, and basically what it says is bad money drives out the good, and basically what it means is, if there's gold and silver in the market, or another good currency in the market like Bitcoin, or if you believe, if you're a big Bitcoin person, you would put yourself in this. Well, that's why Bitcoin isn't being used, because hey, why would I waste my Bitcoin, my valuable Bitcoin, and my gold or silver, and buy my groceries when I can use these worthless dollars? And people have traditionally done that. I mean, they would they would always spend the paper first because it
Sure.
carried a little, even when the federal government was solid financially. I mean, you
Yeah.
think of 1880, 1885, whatever.
Mhm.
The economy is booming. The federal government has almost no debt. They've grown so fast that even the Civil War debt is a pittance. And
I'm kind of jealous, to be
this,
honest. I mean, it'd
yeah.
be
Well, people even then didn't like the paper dollars. They
yeah,
wanted the gold. They would spend the paper first, and then if there was nothing left, if they had to spend it, then they'd spend the coin.
sure.
And they, in fact, I bought a gold dollar from I'm trying to think when it was. I think it was right before the Civil War, like 1858, I think it was. And it's a tiny thing. It's smaller than a dime.
Sure.
And nobody used it for transactions. They made jewelry out of it. They would just punch a hole in it and, so that they could always use it if they needed to. It was that type of thing.
Right. Yeah,
Because why would I use that when I can use a piece of paper?
for
That type
sure.
of thing. Of course, in 1858, there weren't many papers, but within a few years, there were, the federal government was printing a lot of paper because of the
Yeah.
Civil War. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I find the history behind so much of this stuff so interesting. And I have to admit, like I said a couple minutes ago, like I'm kind of jealous. Like I'd kind of like to see how the other side lived, back when you could when buying a piece of property, was like it's actually your property and the plot of land was your plot of land. And when you went to go do things, like you didn't have this overwhelming structure that you had to jump through all these hoops with, and the money that you had like actually had like real like good value to it. And it just makes a person wonder, like what could be. And it's like I when I think back of like even it's crazy to look at the degradation of what the dollar's gone through, even for as long as I've been around. I'm only 32, but I remember my first job, and I remember, my minimum wage, and for each person it's drastically different, but I made 7.25. But I'm here to tell you, when I was making 7.25 for the first like actual job on paper that I had, I actually remember that like when I would go out to buy things, I could actually like get a good deal on things still. And that was still only like, I don't know, like 2009, like just like, and that was like post like the recession and the collapse and all of that. And I mean, my family had just lost our home. Our home had been foreclosed on. We moved. But even after that, like comparative to today, it's like, man, I could go out and fill like a shopping cart still with food for what I made on minimum wage and still have enough left over. And it's like today, I'm lucky if I can walk out of the supermarket making what I make, and I make a relatively decent wage, and like 5 items is $100.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. And
All my students were fascinated with the idea of, or infuriated when McDonald's dropped the dollar menu. Yeah, they
oh yeah,
you could buy a hamburger for $1. I'm like,
yeah,
dude, you have no idea. I still remember. I still remember. Okay, it's on YouTube. There's a commercial for McDonald's called Change Back from 1971,
okay,
where they say you can still get value for your dollar. You can still, and you see the hand
yeah,
putting, you can get 2 cheeseburgers and our delicious fries and a
yeah,
drink for $1 and get change back. And the guy gets handed a nickel. And that was what you could buy back
yeah,
it was in the 70s, but I remember that.
yeah.
I'm older than you. A few years.
Well, you know what? I'll live vicariously through your experiences and just be like, wow, what great times, but it's crazy because growing up, so I grew up a little bit more rural, and I lived in a town just outside of where I currently live now, and a tiny little town. and it was actually a township, like not that many people, and there was a beach that everybody used to go to, and they had this little snack shack there. And I remember we would go there, and you could get a burger, chips, and like a medium drink, or a regular drink for like $3.50 still. And like today, if you went to go get something like that, you're paying almost like $15 for that. And it's like,
Yeah.
at like what point, and you still have people that are just like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing to see here. It's all normal, like this is just the normal rising cost and things. And I'm like, I don't actually buy that argument at all. It is crazy, like just to see how even in that short of time, just to see how drastic that change is. And I guess like what I kind of want to push, to with the Fed conversation is like, in your mind, with the state of how things are, you have the quarrels between Powell and Trump, and you have so many different things going on. You have states that are going through, and they're like, well, maybe we should do something with gold and silver. And there's a lot of mechanisms at play right now. Where do you think, like, and you don't have to put a time frame on it if you don't want to, but where do you see economically things ending up with how they are right now? I mean, what does that picture look like in your mind?
All right. Economic predictions are always fraught with error. And,
of course. Yep.
I think it was the guy, you can rely on models, like there was this guy.
Yeah.
He was, I don't think he was even an economist. His name was George. I think it was George Box. And he said, all models are wrong. Some are useful. And I think that's also true for predictions, because
I agree,
because, the prediction's going to be wrong, but maybe it's useful. I think we're due for a recession, not like a collapse, but a recession.
Yeah.
I mean, we Trump's tariffs are not helping the economy. They're certainly cutting down on imports, which cut down on people's ability to enjoy goods on credit, really, because as the United States is a net importer, and when you start shutting down imports, well, if we consume more than we make, and we go down to the level of consuming only what we make, where our lifestyle is going to be lower.
For sure. Yeah.
That's in some sense that's better, because it means we're not going more and more into debt. But in this case, it's just it's not really going to help us long term, and it's going to hurt us in the short term. I think we're long term, and by long term I mean 5 to 10 years.
Sure. Yep.
We're absent major policy changes that I don't see coming right now, but who knows? We're headed for a sovereign debt crisis in not just the United States, but Japan and a good part of the developed world.
Sure.
I think anyone carrying 100% of debt to GDP is going to be in a world of hurt 5 to 10 years, and it'll happen fast when it happens, but it's going to be a slow degrading. If you look at Japan's sovereign credit rating, I think I said this on the show before. I mean, that's my canary in the coal mine. It went from AAA to AA plus, like where we are in the United States. And now, it's gradually gone down. Now it's at, I think, A plus or something like that.
And I was going to ask you about that too, because I know we did talk about that at one point. And I apologize for interjecting, but that is something that I think is important, right? Because I don't think, to my mind, I don't know if many people actually realize what a big deal that kind of is to some degree.
Yeah, Japan is a big part of the world economy, and they have double America's debt to GDP ratio.
Yeah.
So basically, they have the same national debt that we do, but half the people. And by the way, their population is falling, which makes it even worse, because Japan has a population pyramid like this. There are almost no young people. It's all old people are dying off. So it's only going to get worse for Japan. They're going to be the first, in my opinion, they're going to be the first domino to fall.
Sure.
But when they fall, the next ones will be quick, I think.
Sure.
And we're on a path to be among the dominoes to fall. And by fall, I don't mean, it's going to be Road Warrior, where we're all.
We're not going to see Mel Gibson out in the
no. That's not. I mean, a lot of. I mean, there's so many preppers out there. I've lived with and lived among them and been with them for 35 years. And like, when anarchy comes and the collapse comes, I'm going to be ready and I'll have my guns. Like, okay, you should have your guns, but when the collapse comes, it's going to be more like, think Britain in the 1950s than the Road Warrior or the Hunger Games.
Somebody's dream.
Probably.
I think somebody's dream has just been annihilated by that concept. It's interesting you bring that up. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think most rationally minded people should have some type of extra provisions, right? Like, I think that's just a common sense type of thing. But I know people that like, not to get somewhat off tangent, but I do know people that have like, they get like, some of them are like super specific. They have very hyper specific things. And it's just like, yeah, but like, you do know, like, it's so specific that it's a point of diminishing return. And if it doesn't happen the way that you think it's going to happen, one, like, that's probably a really good thing. But two, like how are you going to take that if you spend your whole life just like preparing for this ultimate collapse? And it's like, to me, like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I would be much more preferable to something that's not as chaotic or cataclysmic. But yeah, no, it's somebody's I think fantasy or dream was just destroyed, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, there have been cases of individual anarchy from time to time and from city to city. We saw that after the hurricane in New Orleans in 2006. There was looting. I mean, so it's prudent to be prepared and have a few provisions. I mean, let's face it, if anarchy does come, the Mormons are going to be the best prepared. That's part of their religion to have some sort of provisions, and that's not a bad thing. Good for them.
100%.
I think what we want to do is be prepared for things we don't expect but are possible. That's why we buy life insurance. That's why we do a lot of things that we do. And political anarchy or crime or great depressions or economic upheavals, all that's going to happen from time to time and place to place, and we should be prepared for it. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're driving laser focus, you might be missing out on a few things.
Just hyper specific to a fault, I am a huge proponent, like, and there's one of the best things I ever heard was it was like the philosophy of the 6 P's: prior planning prevents piss poor performance. So it's like, stay ahead of the curve a little bit, definitely hit that mitigation metric. There's a couple things, because I do want to actually talk about some of the tariff things that have come up recently. But before we do that, David has a point that he brought up, which I don't know if you can speak to this in terms of why this might be taking place, or like, is it really unacceptable? Is it something that would happen regardless? But I thought it was interesting, and it might be something that we might be able to speak to briefly.
Okay, the eggs thing is simply a direct result of the overkill off from the avian flu. That's what it was. And also, I know that a lot of states are implementing cage-free rules, which in my state, in 2019, I was able to buy a dozen eggs for $1.99 in Massachusetts. The day it went to cage-free, they went to $3.99.
Sure.
And that's where they're at now. So I mean, they of course went up to $7 or $9 a dozen during the kill off. But he's right about food being way too high.
Yeah.
And that's one of the pieces I'm working on, and I don't know how long it'll take me to do it, because there's a lot of details to it. There's the inflation piece and the payroll tax piece, whatever. But I want to do a piece about how much the average person actually pays in taxes.
Sure.
Because most people think they don't pay much. They think, oh, I only pay a little bit in taxes, and guess what? My kid got $5,000 in Pell Grants. I'm like,
yeah,
dude, you pay 10 times that in taxes. Trust me.
Exactly.
I mean, and if you're an average person,
yeah,
you pay 10 times that in person.
Yeah,
as much.
Yep.
You don't even realize it because you never see it.
Right.
Because it's not part of your salary. They just raise the price on the goods that so I'm doing that. And one of the things that I've already looked at is the price of food. Now, the price of food is, a lot of it is the price of land, and there's some materials,
Sure.
fertilizer and all that, and feed for cattle and all the rest of it. But that's not a big portion of it. A lot of it's labor.
Yep.
And of course, labor is heavily taxed. So that's part of it.
Yep.
But that's just kind of, food wouldn't be going up in the way you would think in the last couple of years, just because of that. Because, well, television makers have to pay their employees, and their employees are taxed, and television prices are going down. And you could go down the list. Why is food going up more? Well, one of the other things in the federal budget that goes back really to the 1930s is farm price supports. So in this case, the consumer is a two-time loser. First, you're taxed to support the farm price supports. Okay. So you have to take money out of your paycheck before you even see it and give it to farmers. We'll discuss which farmers in a minute. And then the purpose of the program is to raise the price of food. It sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not. The purpose of the program is to raise the price of food. And that's been around since the 1930s. In fact, there was a beautiful folk song by Woody Guthrie called Deportees. And I loved it because it was a threefer. It was a threefer. Yeah. It was a three times satire. And it starts out with the lines, and Johnny Cash did a great cover of it with Johnny Rodriguez back in the 70s. The peaches are rotting and the oranges are packed in their creosote dumps. And basically, the story is about how California paid the Mexicans in the Bracero program. They were legal immigrants, okay?
Sure.
Not only were they legal immigrants, okay? This program started in, I think, the 20s, and it went through the 1960s. They didn't have enough immigrants. So they recruited them from Mexico. It was called the Bracero program. And they would come and they would pick the fruit, and then they'd go home at the end of the season. And the story was about a plane crash. Like, a bunch of these guys were going back to their home. They've already picked their fruit or vegetables or whatever they're picking. And the plane gets crashed. And it's a great story because it makes fun of the New Deal program that pays farmers to destroy crops, good food, while there are no starving people in America, but there are people that could certainly use the food, and it satirizes the scapegoating of immigrants, because on the radio and a lot of the media reports, they didn't mention any of the names. They just said they were deportees. In other words, they were immigrants, and it showed press bias. So it shows press bias. bigotry against immigrants and New Deal stupid policies that raise prices on consumers, tax them, and the whole thing ended in disaster, right? They ended up getting rid of the program because they passed in 1965. They passed the National Origins Act that abolished the program and changed the way immigrants work. But it's interesting that the United States. I don't want to make this about immigration, but we had relatively free and open immigration until 1921, and then they clamped down. But then they realized, well, we technically still had open immigration, open borders with all of North and South America, the entire Western Hemisphere.
Sure, yeah.
Like anyone could come from Peru or wherever and go to the United States, and they would be a legal immigrant. The laws only stopped people coming from Europe and Asia. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That in 1965 they closed the border to Latin America, but they found that we didn't have enough people coming from Latin America, especially Mexico. So they created the Procero program to recruit them to come up. That was the problem. We didn't have enough immigrants in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and of course in the 30s during the Great Depression they kicked them out. They deported them, but because there was a labor shortage, there was huge unemployment, and there was huge controversy over that too. But anyway, the point of, I digress. The point of it is, our government policies are artificially increasing food prices and have for years, and the price of those farm price supports have gone up recently. It's now about $42 billion a year. And and you think about it in the terms of what is that per household in America? Well, it's about $300 a person. Well, gee, that buys a lot of groceries, right? I mean, $300 a family, that buys a lot of groceries. That's most people's weekly grocery bill, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
And that's what the program costs you just in your taxes, not counting the higher prices at the market. I mean, and the thing is, the programs tend to go to the wealthier, larger farmers with the lawyers and accountants who take advantage of the programs rather than the small farmers. Mm-hmm. I did know one small farmer who took advantage of it. He had was a friend of mine when I lived in Wisconsin. He had bought some farmland, never planted a crop. He was a real estate agent. All right. He was one of what they call a phantom farmer.
Oh,
and
sure.
he bought the farmland and took the payments so that he would never, he just kept taking the payments so that he wouldn't have to plant. That the federal government literally pays you not to plant. So here's a guy who's a real estate developer. He probably never even dug a flower out of a flower bed in his life, and he's getting farmer subsidies. That's where your tax dollars are going to. I mean, and he was the small end. He was kind of an exception. Most of them are for these big conglomerates, and they take big money. In years past, they've kind of reformed it a little bit. In years past, they had what was called the Market Promotion Program. Now it's the Market Access Program. It's about $1 billion program with the Agriculture Department, and they used to spend it to subsidize agricultural exports abroad. And what happened was, pretty much the only ones getting the subsidies were giant corporations like McDonald's, Diamond, which makes all the nuts. Biggest nut company. I mean, it was just a list of big food and big ag. And so they said, we're going to reform it. And what they did was they created, if you go to the Market Access Program's website now, they created lobbies that are funded by your taxes that raise the price of eggs. There's a national egg board. There's a national honey board. There's a national popcorn board. There's a national, pick a board, and they raise the prices, and the lobbies lobby to raise the prices more. And it's just, that's where we're at. So the impact is is maybe not as great as what I'm explaining,
Sure.
but there is a tangible impact.
Why does it not surprise me too that they would utilize funds to create lobbies for eggs and all of these different things? Like, I mean, what a government thing to do. And it just like, it's not, I hate to say it, Tom, but I'm not even surprised anymore that's just a natural progression that they take. It's like, oh yeah, like we're just, I don't know, we're going to make a chicken lobby. And like, so this is going to be a thing, next year or whatever. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, talk about,
that's the other thing. If you look at the chicken lobby, that you think that's something. The chicken lobby is run by the big slaughterhouses, people like Tyson or whatever. And guess what? They lobby to make sure that it's very difficult to create a slaughterhouse so they can control the input and output. And there was a story a couple of years ago. I think it's going online this year, but there were 4 slaughterhouses that contributed more than 3/4 of all of the meat in, I forget whether it was beef or poultry. I think it was actually but there's 4 slaughterhouses that controlled the overwhelming majority of. I think there's 4 that control the overwhelming majority of each of them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But a bunch of ranchers said, okay, well, let's create our own. And the regulations were so onerous, they had to raise $300 million.
Oh my gosh.
To be able to create a slaughterhouse. Now it would be, it's a large scale slaughterhouse. So there would be some costs involved in slaughtering thousands of animals. There would be upkeep or whatever, but 300 million is prohibitive. And that's one of the things. It's people have been raising cows and chickens and sheep and pigs since time immemorial and slaughtering them.
Yeah.
And they're going to be fine. I mean, the worry is, oh, well, some of them might have some diseases or whatever. But the fact is, diseases get through anyway. And the regulations are such that if you, like, there's some small ones that go around the country, or some of them even travel. But the rule is there has to be a salaried USDA agent on site at all times when the slaughtering is happening. That's a huge regulatory burden for a small slaughterhouse. That's why there's so few of them. So I mean, just say that's basically saying if you're running full time, you're going to add 80,000, 100,000, depending on how much they're paying the salary and whatever the cost is, because they're not just offering USDA employees to the slaughterhouse. That has to be paid for by the slaughterhouse. And so it's
you mean it's not out of pure benevolence and goodwill, Tom?
Well, they always say that, don't they?
No, but of course they do. Yeah,
they lie in every way, and
we're from the government and we're here to help, Tom. Don't you understand?
I mean, they always sell us on this. With Social Security, they say, oh, guess what? You're going to get money when you retire, and it's safe. You know why it's safe? Because we're going to, when we have a surplus, we're going to invest it in treasury bills. Those are the U.S. government's highest rated things. So it's going to be in the bank and earning interest. And what's the first thing they do? They spend it, and there's nothing, and they keep an accounting of it. And then what does the Federal Reserve Bank do? Just to bring it back to the Federal Reserve, they suppress the interest rate so that it loses value every year.
Yeah.
And the Social Security Trust Fund has lost over $1 trillion due to Federal Reserve interest rate suppression.
Yeah.
The interest earned in the trust fund, the Medicare trust fund, which is basically spent anyway, but in the Social Security Trust Fund, they have lost over $1 trillion in current dollars spending value.
Oh my God!
Because they earn less than the rate of inflation in interest. I mean, that's the stock market has never lost value 5 years in a row.
Yeah,
but that's where we are with the Social Security Trust Fund.
Good
and then
Lord.
They tell you, oh no, you don't want to invest your money in the market. The stock market might go down, but in the meantime, the Social Security Trust Fund has gone down 5 years in a row and is going to go down at least the next 2 years. So, well, what is it? If you call Wall Street a casino, what does that make Social Security? What is, it's a worse investment than a casino.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah, no, it's just, it's so wild. It's like literally all I envision this whole apparatus is like, find the most irresponsible person in your family and loan them a massive amount of money, and that with the expectation that there's going to be a return. And when you finally go and be like, hey, can you provide, can you give me the money back down? There's like, I don't know what happened to it, man. Like, I had it one moment and it's gone. and I don't actually know where it all goes. Like, I think I spent it stopping at the 7-Eleven on a road trip at some point, but as for the rest of it, I don't really know. And it's it's a, oh gosh, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like, when you really step back and think about it, I've heard this saying by people. It's just like, like, our politicians, or our bureaucrats are just like, they make up some of the best and brightest that our society has to offer. Well, it's like, if that's the case, then what does that say about our society at this point?
Yeah, it's terrible.
Hey,
Paul had a pretty good comment in the in the comments. He says, you can put it up, death tax.
Yeah, for sure.
Ends family farms. And he's right. And of course, this goes back to the Federal Reserve too, right? Because when they set the inheritance tax, they said, oh, don't worry, we're going to set it really high. It's going to be millions of dollars, and you're all going to be safe. And then what happens? Inflation happens.
Yeah.
And what else happens? The Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, and that jacks up property values. And all of a sudden, all those farms that were basically worthless 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago are now worth millions and millions of dollars. And guess what? They get subject to the estate tax, even though they're the same farms that wouldn't have been subject to the estate tax 20 or 30 or 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is yet another way that the system is rigged against you. It's rigged against the middle class and the working poor, and then certainly the regular farmers, the family farmers. Yeah, the corporate farms, they're going to be fine because they have the lawyers and accountants to take advantage of all of the subsidies, and they have the lawyers and accountants to get around the regulations. But the regular family farms don't, and that's what government is counting on. The giant ag, just like big pharma and the military industrial complex, they have their lobbyists. They also have the money for lobbyists, and they get what they want.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in the situation we're in.
And there's another comment that I'll put up here in a minute. Well, I'll just put it up now, but there's, something kind of discussing, and I do, I think this conversation is obviously very befitting of like the economic conversation, but I think it was like a month and a half ago, I had seen a couple blurbs discussing like our beef, and I think it was somewhere in and around the like 40th percentile of beef that we consume comes from Asia. It's not even produced here, and it may even be a little bit more than that, but it's like, that's insane. Like, we're not even producing the majority of the beef that we consume. Most of it's coming from overseas at this point. And it's like, not only is it coming from overseas, but it tends to be of a lesser quality. You don't really know where it's coming from. I mean, you have an idea. I think a portion of it comes from places like China, but it's like, you don't really know like the quality of it. They just slap a nice, sexy label on it saying, oh, it's like it's grade A Black Angus. And it's like, yeah, except it was like, shot behind some dude's barn that frickin' was like harvested in a fucking mud puddle. It's like, you don't. And I know that sounds really like demeaning, but it's like, dude, like they're like, it's insane to me. And this kind of goes back to part of the discussion that we had, but like, we really like, I find it difficult to wrap my head around the fact that we really don't produce as much as we used to anymore. Like that used to be a thing. Like the United States, like we produce some of the best stuff that you can buy. Our steel is second to none, and our food is good, and and we had all of these different things. And now it's like we import so much stuff, and then there's this complaint of like, oh well, it's lesser quality. It's like, okay, but like who, where does the fault lie in that? And then it's like you look at the pricing, like Centerline is pointing out, and like David pointed out, like the pricing on food, for instance, is like just becoming more and more astronomical as time goes on. And it's like, well, yeah, like, but there's so much that goes on in and around this conversation. And when you look at where some of this stuff comes from, it's hardly worth what we pay for it to begin with. So,
yeah, let me pick up on something else you said earlier. You said,
oh,
sure.
I'm
not trying to, you said, oh, the quality of beef and the whatever that's coming over from China, the food coming from China is lower quality. And I believe that's the case. And you're worried about like, well, I'm not trying to, you didn't say racist, but I'm not trying to be racist, whatever.
I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I'm being an asshole.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
What's coming over from China is not the stuff from a Chinese family farm. Like it's the big ag. It's the same big ag crap that you're going to get here in the United States.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have a problem with a small Chinese family farm buying beef from him, but they don't have the ability to get it here. These are all the connections with big ag, right? They're going to be buying seed from the big seed companies in the United States, and that's what's going to get them access to the American market. And they're going to be it's all connected that way between big business. It's not that, well, Chinese are filthy people or whatever. They're not. They're very clean people. They're very nice people. They make great things, just like the Japanese and the Koreans. And I mean, you look at. I mean, I remember. I'm old enough to remember when if you wanted to buy junk, you'd bought it. It would say "Made in Japan." That used to be the joke. It was even in songs in the 70s that, all the beads we used to, there was Cherokee Nation. All the beads we used to make by hand are now made in Japan. In other words, they're junk. All right. Yeah. That by the 1980s, that wasn't the case. Japan had become this industrial giant, and it still is. And you look at, both of my cars are, all right, they're made in America, but they're Japanese make. I have two Hondas.
Sure.
And my daughter has a Toyota, and they're great cars. And the Japanese and Chinese and the Koreans, they all make great stuff. But when it comes to big ag, it's a different issue. It's not, but they try to twist it on you. The billionaires will do this propaganda. Oh, well, you're just racist. Like it was kind of the old COVID line. About,
for sure, yeah, yep.
If you thought that the virus was created in the coronavirus was created in the Wuhan Institute for Novel Coronavirus Research, you were a racist against Chinese. You had to believe that it was actually a human transfer from bat soup in a Chinese wet market. That was the official narrative. It's like, no, that's not the case. The Chinese are not dirty people. It's the corporations and the government getting to bed together that makes it dirty. That's what makes it dirty. Chinese are fine. They're great people. And the average Chinese farmer, I would buy their beef in a heartbeat, just like I'd buy a regular American family farm beef. It's usually better.
And isn't it crazy too how there is and I like what you said there because I do concur on your points. I think there's, and I've brought this up before. I think I may have brought it up on one of the last conversations we had, but it's amazing how we have this portion of society that's all about like, oh, we need to like localize and we need to buy from our local farms and have our local coffee shops and all of these things. And then it's like when they start up, and case in point, there is a local coffee shop I went to a lot, and the reason they started is because there was a demand in the neighborhood for it. So they did. And turns out after the first year, like people just, most of the business they got was from outside that neighborhood. And it's like all the people that wanted it didn't want to like patron the place. And it's like, okay, but like, I think to some degree, and please feel free to elaborate on this or tell me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of it, so like I actually enjoy eating meat and buying products from local companies. I really do. And I like to support a lot of those companies. But I think a lot of people today, I think they're in love with the idea. But when it comes to like actually being a consistent patron or actually buying these products, even though they say like, we've got to like keep business here in the country, when it really comes down to it, like, I'm not saying you have to shop there all the time, but it's like a lot of people just don't seem to really be with that program when they realize like, oh, like I have to pay an extra dollar or two for this product. And to me, that's not a big issue, because I think that usually when people start out or they have a smaller business, they actually have to work for your business. And I appreciate that with a lot of companies, but I feel like when the rubber meets the road, a lot of people just aren't about that. And so like, it is true. Like, I think there's, I've even bought stuff from smaller companies over in Europe, and they make great stuff. And I would definitely buy from them again. And it's the same anywhere else. But I do think that there is this insidiousness when it comes to corporatizing, especially when it's like big agriculture, to where like when you look at the comparison of the slaughterhouses from big ag versus like the small guy, ethically, morally, the way that they process, is like, it's so different from like the small farmer who's like, yeah, like I knew this calf from like when it was born, and like it kind of sucked, but it's the role they play, and you look at their practices, but they're also the ones that are horribly vilified by big agriculture, to where they're like, oh, their practices of processing meat and killing the animal, or the slaughter of the animal, is inhumane. Meanwhile, like their animals are healthier, happier, and their practices, the small companies' practices tend to be a lot better. And I do think there's a huge propaganda spin on stuff like that. So,
yeah, there is. I'm in the Northeast corridor in the big megalopolis. I'm in just south of Boston, and there aren't a lot of farms around here. There's some, and when I go and get their fruit or their vegetables, there aren't many ranchers around here. It's always better than what I get at the supermarket. But you know what? I got a busy life, and it's the convenience. I mean, that's my problem. I don't have the time to do it. And that's what sucks me in. It's not even so much the price, it's the time.
Exactly. Yeah, I can see that.
Some of the local supermarkets are starting to incorporate local products, at least around here. And Massachusetts has a lot of farmers markets. I mean, I think they're subsidized by the state. And I know, my brother-in-law, he runs a farm. He's a farmer, and he does farmers markets. Like they just go into the city square and sell their goods. And three quarters of them are using SNAP cards. So, I mean, there's a huge market among those who are subsidized by government. But I am in, like the comment says, love with it. What was it? I love the concept and not, I love the idea, not the actual process. And for me, it's just, I don't want to have to go to one place for my food and another place for my soap and another place for my, and it's just the convenience of it. And maybe at some point I will get to the point where, okay, I'm just going to order all my food locally, and then I'll order the soap on Amazon or do the rest online. And it won't be that big a deal. But I'm not personally not there yet. But I always appreciate the produce when I order it directly from the farmer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there are just certain things convenience wise that honestly, like we all go to that bigger store because it's like it's just available, and it's one of those, it's one less thing that you have to go somewhere else for. And I think it comes down to personal preference or where you currently are at that point. But I mean, there's still stuff. I mean, heck, I can't even really say a whole lot because I have a Costco membership, and I'm here to tell you, like, without that particular membership, my ability to maximize the amount of groceries that I get is exponentially amplified by the fact that I'm able to go to Costco and buy in bulk. And it's way cheaper to do that and still get a relatively decent product for my money than it is to go to some of these other places to where buying in bulk is like taking out a second mortgage. But there are certain products, like, if, as it pertains to meats, I won't buy meat from Costco. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but there's certain people I trust and that I've patroned and that I feel have far better products. And so that is one of those things that I will go out of my way for. And so I definitely get that. And I think it's something that people just have to kind of factor into their lives as to where that sits. So I mean, if there's anything you want to add to that, and then I kind of want to do a pivot to the last portion here, specifically talking about tariffs, if you're up for that. So.
Yeah, I'm up for that. And I love the Costco Pog juice. I think it's awesome. I'm a big like juice guy. I love juice.
Sure.
I don't know what it is, but the Pog juice is it's so good.
I don't drink, I haven't drank pop for years. And I don't know if you're know of the brand, but it's called Olipop. They market themselves as like it's like a pop without the bad things of the pop. Like the high sugars, the high, all of the crap that's typically in it. And I tried it, and I'm like, dude, like for somebody who doesn't drink pop, who I haven't had it for many, many years. I don't know if by definition it's still considered a pop. That's what they're called, Olipop. Honestly, the root beer flavor that they have, the cream soda and the grape, which is what you get in one of their packs, tastes better than the pop that I used to drink when I was a kid. And it has like 3 grams of sugar. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, some part of me doesn't even want to know what makes up for that flavor, but it's like, this tastes way better than the stuff that I remember. And I don't feel sick, which if I had like a Coke today, I would probably get violently ill. It happened the last time I had a Coke, which was over a decade ago. When I had first stopped drinking pop, I got super sick, and I don't get sick. I don't feel like crap. And so, it's like, yeah, there are those certain products, man, to where it's just like when you find them, kind of like the juice you were talking about, it's like, yeah, it's a freaking good buy,
Yeah, I pretty much gave up on, switched over to soda water from as you say, pop. We call it soda here. About 10 years ago, and I never looked back. And every company's got them out now. Coca-Cola's got some, and Schweppes has got some, but there's a nice regional brand here in the Northeast called Polar, and they make, they were the first ones in it. And they just have hundreds of flavors, and they're just really good because it has
cornered the market, huh?
Yeah. Well, there's no sugar. It's just carbonated water with a light taste of flavor, no calories, no sugar, no anything. And it's just, it's very refreshing. And I switched over to that, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
I have a soda pop, maybe once a month. Yeah. I'll have we keep Diet Coke in the house, and I bought some Barks root beer that I probably have, like I said, once a month, if that. Yeah. But soda water is my thing. I love it.
No, so we'll get to the tariffs, but I just have to make a point.
Actually, Ishkaba is my thing. The water of life, as the Irish would say. Okay. Actually, I think or maybe it's the Scotch that call it Ishkaba, the water of life. But
there you go.
That's only my nightcap. All day I drink soda water.
So for whatever reason, and I don't get any like negative effects from it at all. And I know so many people that they're just like, I can't drink that straight. I don't know how you can do it. I like a good mineral water, and that's something I can like drink a whole bottle of in one day, and it's just like no negative effects. And I know other people to where they're just like, dude, like I don't know how you can do that.
What kind of mineral water were we talking?
So it just whatever the brands are on the shelves. I think I'm gonna butcher the name of it, but like Gelsteiner, or like I don't know. I don't know how to say it. But
how's that different from water?
It's like it has, I think, like a heavier mineral profile, but it's like carbonated. I guess that it's something you could make like drinks with. I think some people will mix stuff like mix it with like drinks and stuff. But I've always just had it, like I've never mixed it with anything. I just drink it straight. But apparently it's one of those things that gives people like bowel issues, and I'm just like, no, like this is fine. Like, and it has a flavor that I like, which to most people there's like no.
I would probably drink it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like and it's very like palatable, and I'm just like, yeah, no, like this is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, and people are like, you're absolutely insane. I don't know. So I'm just like, whatever, like it is what it is. But no, I like various drinks, and some of them you can only find certain places. So, but all that being said, when we look at like the tariffs, and there's a couple things that pertaining to tariffs that have come up recently. Trump, was talking about, tariffing, I think in like 50 days, if Russia doesn't change their disposition, as if he has any leverage to dictate what they do right now. He's like, I'm going to 100% tariff. And then there's, there's also another proposal, which a lot of people are just like, dude, if you even remotely like implement this proposal, you're pretty much going to tank the world economy, which we'll get into a discussion about. But there's like a suggestion aside from like the 100% tariff on Russia in 50 days, which again, I think is it's one of those things. It's certainly a method, but I don't think it's one that'll actually work. He's supposedly, there's whispers about a 500% tariff on China and a few other countries that like buy oil from Russia. And it's like, and I've heard it from like three different outlets now, to where it's like, dude, like you do realize if you implement that, like things are not going to go the way that you think they're going to go. And I have to take it with a grain of salt, because it seems like every time that Trump talks about something like this, he always ends up backing away from it because he realizes what a bad idea it really is. But I mean, in what world does any of that make sense to you, Tom? I mean, on top of the tariffs that already that he's already tried, which he reneged on. To my understanding, he reneged on the large tariffs that he wanted to place on China, because there's stuff that we needed from China that we weren't going to get.
Right.
So it's like, what? Like I guess I'm asking you to try and rationalize an irrational train of thought at this point.
Well, it's not rational. Trump has, for many years, talked about how trade was a zero-sum game, that if a country sells more to us than we sell to them, that somehow we're being victimized by them. And that's not economically true. It's not even remotely true. Even it's entirely possible that we have a very beneficial relationship with a country where we sell them nothing and we buy stuff from them.
Sure.
And we still have a trade surplus with the world, because we use it to make stuff and sell to the rest of the world. That there's no rationality to that. Yeah, Trump imposed these tariffs, which he had to pull back because the stock market freaked out on. And he says, well, I'm going to have 90 deals in 90 days. And we're almost up to the 90 days. And he's had deals with Vietnam and Israel and nobody else. And let me tell you, the frogs know. The frogs know.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
because the French and the Canadians are just waiting it out. Okay.
Yeah.
They basically figured it out that all these tariffs are getting struck down by the Supreme Court eventually. Let's just
Yeah.
wait it out. It's not going to be that long. And I think they figured it out correctly. And so is the rest of the world, that this is all just bluster and posturing.
Yeah.
And it's all going to go away. Except maybe the tariffs on Russia, because the Supreme Court will say, well, it's national security, blah, 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 blah. They may do that on
Yeah.
a handful of countries, but there's really no national security, because the way the laws were written going back to the 30s, but especially since the 70s, the president's given wide leeway on tariffs, but the leeway is national security based.
Sure.
So
yeah.
There's no national security requirement that we put a tariff on imports from Eswatini. All right. Like it's a small diamond country in South Africa. It's not a national security issue. And everybody knows it. Everybody knows the Trump tariffs are just Trump trying to impose taxes on, he thinks, foreign companies, but really it's on the American people. I mean, you look at, I went to buy coffee today, and it was $14 for a small can of that was like 2.5 pound can that was selling for $6.99 just 6 months ago. And that's tariff related.
For sure.
Admittedly, there's also some seasonal variation and all the rest, but it's tariff related. And the tariffs are going away. And I think that's the only reason why the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said is going along with them, because he knows they're going to get struck down anyway. He doesn't really care. I'm convinced that he's not a stupid man. And I'm getting this from Peter Schiff, who I have some disagreements with and some agreements with.
Oh, for sure.
But I don't think he's a smart man. I mean, I don't think he's not a smart man. I think he basically, I'm willing to do this, and maybe we get something out of it, but with the knowledge that it's all going away in a year or so.
Yeah.
That's my take.
It's I hate to say it, but it seems so. I made a couple posts on X over the week, and I kind of went pretty hard on a few of them, but it's like I'm still just amazed at like, just in general, how this admin seems to just be speed running failure in so many different ways. And whether it's like the Epstein thing, or them trying to leverage tariffs on different countries, because like, oh, you're not going to do everything we tell you to do, so we're going to slap this on it. Or like, oh, we're going to stay out of wars, which is not even a thing anymore, along with heck, we haven't even talked about the big beautiful bill post its passing, which I don't know if you even want to go over that a little bit, but it is amazing, like how it seemingly, that seems to be what this administration is for the most part, is just a lot of bluster. I mean, it's unsurprising, but there's nothing like, I mean, when we're looking at the tariffs, it's like, okay, so you're going to put 100% tariff on Russia. It's like, okay, so where, granted, we don't get a huge amount of uranium from Russia, but it's like, this is also the country that you're like, oh, we're divesting and we're not going to do any business because Russia bad. It's like, yeah, but you're still buying products from Russia. So it's like, what is it? Like, are you going to just like divest yourself entirely? I don't think that's going to be the case. It's very much like Europe, how Europe even took the position of like, well, we can't deal with Russia because they're doing things that we don't like. And it's like, okay, like, you may not be buying the oil per se, or the natural gas, but it's like, secretly behind everything, you're all kind of full of shit, because you're still buying certain goods, but you're parading like you're doing this grandiose thing of like, we're gonna really stick it to you. So I don't know, man. Like it just there's a lot of things I kind of wish I was wrong on. I wish that they would, do some of the things that are really good. But when it comes to the tariff, that like how does anybody take us seriously? I guess, I mean, we can't even seem to. Why when I say we, I mean the administration. I mean, they can't even get their story straight from one week to the next about Epstein. My gosh, I mean, they said all these people said that all of this stuff existed, then they said it didn't exist, and now they're back to like, well, we might release some. So it's like it's insanity.
Yeah. That's I tweeted for the Republican Party of Massachusetts earlier this week, and I said that the old three branches of government were the legislative, executive, and judicial, and the modern three branches of government are pedophiles, Israel, and the surveillance state. But then I realized, wait a minute, I just described one branch. They're all one branch, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. But to go back to your comment about Russia, the bilateral trade between the U.S. and Russia is minuscule. We buy $3 billion worth of stuff from Russia, which is tiny, and we sell 500 million to them. He can add a tariff, but it's not going to make any difference. It might shut off the trade. And really trying to sanction Russia, get the Europeans to do the same thing. All it does is turn Russia more into the hands of China and India, because that's what happened when Biden sanctioned Russia and got the Europeans to not buy Russian oil and gas. All it did was it raised consumer prices in the United States to $5 a gallon. So that working people had to pay almost double the price of gas. But that was a price Joe Biden was willing to pay. And Russia then just turned around and sold it to China and India anyway. It didn't really impact Russia. And ironically, they thought they were going to crush the ruble, and the ruble got stronger. So it just didn't work. It doesn't work. And throwing 100% tariff on Russia is like throwing 100% tariff on Palau, the Pacific island nation. I mean, it doesn't do anything. I mean, it's like, so what? I mean, what is the point? We sold $3 billion. We bought women. They sold $3 billion worth of stuff to us last year. So if you throw 100% tariff on them, we're not going to get $3 billion. We're going to get $50 because they're not going to sell it to us. Right. I mean, the impact of their number one product is oil anyway. If we had a huge tariff on Russian oil, it wouldn't make a difference. They just say, well, we're not going to sell it to you because we can't sell it to you. It's not going to be economically affordable, right? The global market in oil is 5-10% within that, and you go up higher than that, nobody's going to buy it. So it just diverts the flow of like diverting a river of commerce. It just goes in a different direction. And so the idea that, we're going to get tough on Russia, well, that's not going to do anything.
I have to interject this real quick, because I actually laughed when I heard this, but and this happened several days ago, but supposedly, and I've seen several reports corroborating this now, the lithium mine that we had to deal with Ukraine to get minerals and resources from, well, the Russians own it now. So it's like,
it's in the Donbass, so it's already Ukraine sold us. That's like me selling the rights to the Brooklyn Bridge, right? I mean, so it's just okay. Well,
I have to laugh about it because these are the same people. Like, again, I hate to badger the guy, but like, my gosh, I mean, this is like Trump. Like, this was the guy who's like, oh, we're gonna make a deal with Ukraine, and then he went over to Russia and he's like, well, maybe we'll deal with them and see if we can buy their minerals. And he ultimately made the deal with Ukraine. It's like, dude, if you would have hung in there for a little while longer, you would have still had a deal for the mine. And now it's like, yeah, you think you're gonna get any, like, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's like, if you honestly think that at this juncture you're even going to get any part of that deal now, like, good luck. I mean, you're talking about something like that would be a negotiating point of leverage that the Russians now have, because they're like, oh, okay, well, you still want some of these minerals and resources? Like, okay, we'll be willing to negotiate on that, but here's what we want in return. And it's like, and this is the same guy who's just like, yeah, we'll just slap tariffs, all over. And surely, Tom, it's going to work this time. It can't possibly fail like it, like the other times.
Well, the world has changed in a major way in the last 20 years since Obama, but it's accelerated since Obama. It accelerated under Trump 1 and again under Biden and Trump 2. You look at how American presidents are willing to just throw out deals in a way that they never used to. They used to abide by deals. And this is something that when Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, a lot of it was just, oh man, I don't care about the 1600s. I mean, I know you know history, whatever. And it was it was all, and he knows history, but it's from a particular point of view that I don't necessarily agree with. But
sure,
the one comment he made that I thought was interesting was, he says, hey, I get a promise from one president, and then 4 years later, there's another president who undoes the deal. And he lived that. He lived that. If you ever get a chance to get Scott Horton on your program, which I hope you do, he'll talk to you about how the deal was constantly changing for Putin. And he knows that. And that's not just for Russia. That's everywhere. Exactly. That was for Iran, right? Obama negotiated a deal. Trump jumped the deal. The global financial system was for the world. And then what happened? Biden came in and he said, guess what? You're out, Russia. You're out of the Libor system. That's it. Nothing for you. And that's right. And the presidents are constantly changing the rules. So when the Canadian prime minister or the French prime minister see Trump doing this, they're like, yeah, let's just wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's going to change again. That's their view. And you know what? It's a very logical view.
Oh, 100%. And there's, I do on and off. I like to listen to Judge Napolitano's show. He has a few people that I really, really like, or I should say he has a lot of people I really like as guests. And recently this week, he had been using a video clip of something that Putin was saying in 2017, which is basically just like, I've seen 3 presidents come and go in the duration of my time as president of Russia. And he's like, they all come in with all of these really big ideas and all of these, goals. And he's like, and then before you know it, there's a guy who comes in with a black suit, a briefcase, and a black or blue tie. And when they leave that meeting, all of those ideals and all of those things and all of those goals go right out the window and they fall in line. And, I hate to say it, but he's not wrong,
it's something like people will say, oh, you're just being a Putin propagandist, but it's something that all the world leaders know. America is not a stable country anymore. Yeah. We're trying to run the world and we're doing the worst job we've ever done with it.
Yeah.
At least I'm going to go back to a comment that Dave Smith made in one of his podcasts, maybe about a year ago. Yeah. He said, we used to have impressive elites that were intelligent. Yeah. Now we don't. They are, I don't want to say dumb, but they are not impressive. Okay. Yeah. Because there's no understanding of history or how we got there. There's no understanding of continuity. There's no understanding of how the other country will react. It's simply all impulse. And it began really with the drone wars under George W. Bush.
Yeah.
Because we just said, well, we don't care. You're either with us or against us. It's all reactive. So we started bombing 7 countries.
Yeah.
And Obama continued it, and he made it worse, and it just kept getting worse. And the United States is literally an agent of chaos in the world today. And by the United States, I don't mean the American people. I mean our government, the Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
It is an agent of chaos, and people don't realize it because when you're in the eye of the hurricane, there's no wind. But the eye is what controls all the wind. And that's where we're at. Exactly. So, people say, oh, you don't like America. Why don't you move to wherever, move to Iran or Russia? I'm like, no, that's where our bombs go. I don't want to do that. No.
Right. Yeah.
You move where the bombs go. You're the one liking the bombs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. And what a great point that is too, because I mean, oh gosh, and I feel like we could rabbit hole this, and I'm trying to be mindful of time and everything, but what a true oh my God, what a true analysis of the disposition of some people, where especially during the Epstein thing, to where it's just you had people that during the ongoing Epstein thing, I should say, please, pardon my correction, but it's you have people demanding, look, we want the truth. We want you just to, for once in your miserable lives, just be honest, even if it destroys the whole world order, this is something we fundamentally need the truth on, because this is it notwithstanding the horrible things pertaining to the sexual crimes and all of that, but we're seeing deep connections with agencies and etc. And it's anybody that was asking a question, you had this even the administration was just you people are panicans, or you're not real MAGA anymore, or you're not true patriots. Why are you questioning this? Don't worry about it. And it's we've seen this so often, and it's that same thing to where it's look, you don't, just because Putin, I agree with the fact that Putin is correct. It doesn't really matter who the president is, because eventually they get visited and their ideas do turn. We see this for a lot of the presidencies. That doesn't make me a Putin apologist. It doesn't make me anti-American, but recognizing the fact that we have a problem is how you start to recover. And it's at that point, it's I'm not convinced that many people want recovery or that many people want the truth, because the only thing they really have to go on at this point, Tom, is oh, you're anti-American. It's well, I'm not the person who's emboldening the anti-Americans currently in our administration to cover shit up that should be exposed. It's insane, the gaslighting that we've seen in probably the last few months about certain things, notwithstanding Epstein, but the war and oh, the big beautiful bill, the economy is great. Okay, we're gonna see the biggest growth. All right, you haven't seen it yet, but it's gonna be huge. At what point, do you just stop and you're just yeah, no, we fucked up,
well, when we hit a recession, they'll do that. But you're right. This is the moment with the Epstein files. This is the moment where we see the difference between those who are really make America great again, and the Republicudniks, who are basically just covering up for Israel. They're paid information peddlers or influence peddlers. They're paid influence peddlers. These Republicudniks are just they're on the payroll of Benjamin Netanyahu, and certainly Trump is that way. His press conference with Pam Bondi was amazing. Wait, you're still talking about?
Oh, I know.
You're still talking about Epstein? I mean,
that creep.
We have that creep. We have so much more important things like the floods in Texas. I'm thinking, dude,
and we're doing so great, by the way. Yeah, so great.
all those people in the floods are already dead. So
Yeah.
what are you talking about? And that's already in the past too. All right. And in this case, you're saying we shouldn't go after pedophiles, killers of children. That's what we're at. That the official narrative is now, it's okay if you kill, if you molest children, but we have to help the flood victims. That's much more important than catching pedophiles who are in the service of a foreign government. I mean, that's where he's at. But you can see who is a paid influencer, and of course, Trump is paid over $100 million by Miriam Edelson, who's a Israeli / American citizen. The heir of the Sands casino fortune.
Yeah, I just, dude, I just, I mean, it even goes farther than that. I mean, over a year, almost a couple of years now, I talked about Palantir and how close Trump was with Palantir. And I'm just like, no, this isn't good. It's going to come home to roost. And it has. And it's like, there's so many things. Like, I'll be honest with you, Tom, like, I don't want us to fail. Like, that's the last thing I want. Like, I don't want us as a country, hell, I don't even want Trump to fail. But in the end of the day, it's like, no, like if he's going to fail, I want him to fail on his merit. And that's the thing that I'm trying to put across is like, if we're going to fail, let's just fail and then move forward from there. So at least we can move forward with a sense of clarity. But it's like, no, like, we're not even allowing a sense of failure. And it's like, to me, you just look at like so much. I mean, it gets to be so much in the end of the day. And man, it's not, this is probably the fastest, like, like I said earlier, like I've never watched an administration in my time speed run, like just utter like hypocrisy and failure quite in the fashion that I've seen with this one. And I hate to say that.
Well, the interesting thing is that the permanent damage hasn't been done yet.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at it and it's all repairable. He could still turn it around.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't think he's going to. I hope he does too, but I don't see it happening. The damage to the economy is, even from the tariffs, is fairly slight.
Yeah.
The debt, he could still come back and do some actual spending cuts and revive Doge.
Yeah.
He won't, but he could. The chaos of international, he's stopped some of his wars. He's, the slogan at the end in 2020 was, Trump didn't start any new wars. Well, he started 3 already, and it's only 7 months in. But they've subsided at this point, so he could still turn it around. But I don't think it's going to happen. I'm that much of a pessimist. I'm a Griggertarian. William Norman Grigg, he used to say, things can always get worse, and given time, they probably will. That's a quote from him. And I thought it was hilarious. And I thought, gee, that's a little too pessimistic. Yeah. But in the terms of politics, it's very practical.
Yeah. And I kind of take the position of being like a realistic optimist, like I try and look for the good in things, and there are good things that do occur. But it's like, in the end of the day, like I am not unaware of like the realistic side of things of like, no, yeah, we're kind of in trouble. And I do think that there is a sense of, I do think that there is a realm of healthy pessimism to some degree. And I don't think that it's necessarily lost on a lot of people at this point, to where it's like, yeah, like none of us want this whole thing to fail, but in the end of the day, like it's not looking good. And
right.
So I guess I don't know how much more time you have. And if you have a time constraint, I want to try and respect that.
I'd like to wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Get a few things going on.
Yeah. So just to kind of bow tie this, I mean, what I know we already kind of talked about like the assessment of where we're going to be, but I mean, like, it's, if you have anything final that you kind of want to add, like in terms of the Fed or the tariffs or anything, it doesn't even have to be about that, but if you want to just kind of add a few things that you feel are necessary, or heck, even if you want to shout out what your next episode is going to be for next week, then I'll give you the floor to kind of just take it with whichever way you want to go. So
definitely visit my website, YouTube/T Eddlem, Eddlem. See right there, Eddlem.
yeah,
Okay, T Eddlem, and definitely check that out. I think what holds for the future is the Federal Reserve will suppress interest rates. It won't have an impact on inflation much one way or the other. It will drive up asset prices. But I think what's happening is the Fed chair is holding his powder because he thinks a recession is coming and he wants to appear to be doing something when the recession comes. And if he brings interest rates down to zero now, he'll have nothing to do that he can do. Or now it's not going to help the economy, but he wants to appear to be helping the economy. He wants, if he lowers interest rates, he said, oh, we're doing everything we can. We brought it down a full 100 basis points this quarter, and we're going to probably do another rate drop. But that's what'll happen when the recession starts. And I think he expects one to come, and he's holding his powder because if he lowers interest rates now, the recession is going to come anyway, and he's going to have nothing. And people are going to say, well, what's the Fed doing? And at least in the future, he could say, well, we lowered interest rates and, we're going to help. But if you look at the actual data, when interest rates are lower, GDP growth tends to be lower. So it doesn't help, but everybody thinks it helps. And certainly this is what the billionaires want. In fact, that the billionaires are telling Trump, you got to lower interest rates because they want the raised asset prices. They want to be able to pull out the equity. They want their property values to go up, pull out the equity and buy new properties. That's the motivation. That's the lobby. That's why Trump is doing what he's doing. And he's a real estate guy. He understands that. I mean, that when Trump got elected, I knew for sure he was never going to abolish the Fed because the Fed gives real estate guys everything they want. They give them inflation and suppressed interest rates. And Powell is not giving them what they want at the time because in his view, he's looking out for the institution. He almost sees himself as like a Paul Volcker. Guess what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to raise interest rates with this high inflation. Then inflation is going to come down, which it is not because they raise interest rates, but because they lowered the supply of money. If you look at the supply of M2, it went down. It's starting to go back up again. But then he can claim, I lowered inflation. And guess what? Now I'm fighting the recession by lowering interest rates. The Fed is the champion of the economy. But lowering interest rates doesn't help the economy, and raising interest rates has very, very little to do with the consumer price index. Yeah. So it's all theater. It's all theater. That's my final line. There you go.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's, in terms of theatrics, and I'll kind of bow tie it on my side too. Honestly, I think at this point that applies to pretty much everything across the board. I'm just not convinced that, and look, I've said for a long time too, like the most convincing lie is the one that has a sprinkle of truth in there. So it's, it's like, oh, like, yeah, but there is this. It's like, yeah, but like when you pan out and you actually look at the full picture, like it's not that though. And so I do think they have to actually provide some type of substance. But I mean, in the end of the day, I mean, yeah, no, it's one big clown show. It's a big circus. And it's like we are the willing payers to go watch this to get I shouldn't say no return, but we get a we get a diminished or a negative return really for what we're paying.
Negative.
Yeah, and it's like if the price of admission is like $5, then we're we're at a net loss of probably 10. It's like we're in this situation, man, to where it's really going to take a lot of rallying at quite a few different levels, and you've heard me say this a lot, and I know Sean is big about this too, but really, I mean, we've got to really start going to work in our communities and trying to do what we can in our states, because as it stands right now, like I don't know about you, Tom, but like the federal level is just not a practical like arena to fight in right now. And I think if we want to get a lot more traction, I think it has to be done at the state and local level. I think that's a more feasible arena to work in. And it's not even just speaking of necessarily a libertarian disposition, even though that's where you and I and so many others ascribe, but I think if anybody wants to foment any meaningful change that's going to be positive, I think that's where we have to look. So that's kind of where I want to bow tie that. So I think in that realm, that's where I think our hope lies, is at the smaller scale right now. So yeah, that's all I got, man. I really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with me and doing another great podcast episode. And if you got a minute or two, I'll talk with you after. Beyond that, next week, just one more plug. Next week, if all things go well, I do have Scott Horton rescheduled. So hopefully all the things are ironed out and it goes smooth sailing. We'll get to there when we get to there next Thursday. I don't have anything planned yet for the next Thursday episode, but I will be posting that on the Instagram, and I do have a Telegram. So if you are a part of the Telegram channel for the podcast, I will post updates on the Telegram channel as well. Beyond that, thank you every single person that has come in tonight, that spent time with us, that has listened to us ramble on about economics, the Fed, tariffs, and even what we like to drink and shopping at Costco, I guess. It's always great to have the support, and I will see all of you wonderful people next Thursday and next Saturday on the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. And without further ado, have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.